Hello everyone and welcome to my new playing chat video. This time I'm playing Return to Castle Wolfenstein on the Xbox. Well, I'm actually playing it on the Xbox 360, but it was an Xbox game. It's actually the copy I bought for my Xbox quite a few years ago now. This is one of my favourite first-person shooters of all time. And I still enjoy playing it today. I've not actually played it for a while, which probably accounts for why this playthrough is going to look pretty damn awful. Because I've forgotten where most of the people are and what the bad guys were. I mean, there was a time I played this that often I knew what bad guy was going to be in what room and what the sort of best weapons were to use to take out the bad guy. It's incredible how quickly you forget these things when you don't play it constantly like I used to. Back when I had it on the Xbox. I also had it on the PC, and I got the PC version when it came out, but interestingly enough the Xbox version, which I think had the subtitle Tides of War, I might be mistaken about that, but I think that's what they had a subtitle of, actually had an additional level at the beginning, which I think was set in Africa, Tunisia or some place like that, that wasn't in the original PC version. I also had this on the PlayStation 2, but when I bought the Xbox, I quickly picked up a copy of this, and it was played much better on the Xbox. PlayStation version, it was okay, but you could tell the PlayStation 2 was kind of struggling to run it a bit, and the Xbox seemed to play a lot better. It looked nicer. It was much nicer to play as well. That original Xbox joypad, not the big hoofer one, the Controller S version I think it was, because when I got my Xbox it came with the Controller S. It didn't come with the big massive pad. I think that was called the Duke controller, which doesn't surprise me. It was massive, but the Controller S that I had, that was really good. It was perfectly suited to play this game. It's kind of weird, sometimes you might notice that I sort of get stuck in some kind of weird selection thing, like I'll randomly call up the mission menu or something like that. And that's because on the 360 controller the buttons are sort of reassigned, because the 360 controller was different to the Controller S. It didn't have the black and the white buttons, instead they replaced them with L, B and RB buttons. And it took me a little while getting back into this game to figure out which buttons did what. So sometimes I seem to do bizarre things like go into weapon selection when I didn't mean to, and I don't think I managed to throw a grenade and blow myself up. That's usually the height of embarrassment with first-person shooters when you're trying to figure the controls out. Usually that happens to me, because quite often a lot of first-person shooters will use the left trigger button to aim, and then other ones will use the left trigger button to chuck a grenade, and they'll use like the right analog stick to aim or something like that to get the iron sights up. And the number of times that I will have played one first-person shooter and gone to play another, and the first thing I do is think to aim down the iron sights by pulling the left trigger, and I chuck a grenade, it bounces off the wall, lands in front of me, and I'm dead. This time around I didn't manage to do that, so I'm quite happy with that. But yeah, this is a fantastic first-person shooter. It's got everything in it. I mean, here you've got Nazi robot, cyborg dog, machine gun things. You've got Nazis that shoot electricity at you and float around off the floor with using, like, I guess it's Tesla technology. It's fantastic. I love the Wolfenstein universe. I like the alternative history kind of stuff going on, and yeah, it's really interesting. It's like a different take on your standard World War II shooter. You know, like now they've sort of brought it into the 1960s era with the last game, The New Order, which I've got, which was the previous video that I put up, where I continuously, I believe, mispronounced Wolfenstein by calling it Wolfenstein all the way through. It does tend... I have some kind of mental issue with Wolfenstein because some days I'll say Wolfenstein without thinking, and other days I just start saying Wolfenstein without thinking. I mean, I believe it is Wolfenstein. I don't know why I have a problem with it. It's just one of them little language quirks that you have, and I don't actually realise I'm doing it until after I've done it, or until somebody says you're saying that wrong. And I'm really trying consciously to say Wolfenstein in this, not Wolfenstein. Now I know somebody's going to come along now and say, no, it is Wolfenstein. So, well, there you go. I don't care. It's still a fantastic game, and it's well worth checking out. It does work on the Xbox 360. I've noticed, and you'll notice it a little bit later on, where one of the lightning Nazi zombie monster things first appears, there was quite a little bit of slowdown. I don't recall that happening in the game when I played it on the original Xbox, so I do think it's an issue with the 360 and backwards compatibility, because not all Xbox games work on the 360, and those that do, some do have the occasional issue. I think Microsoft, I'm not sure, but I don't know if they use software emulation rather than hardware emulation for the backwards compatibility, and so it wasn't perfect. It was better than nothing, but it wasn't perfect. But for the most part, this runs fine. I know I've got a Call of Duty game. I've got two Call of Duty games for the Xbox. I've got Call of Duty, I think it's their Finest Hour, and then Call of Duty 2, the Big Red One. Now, it could be the other way around. I can't remember now because I've not played them for a long time, but I'm going to drag them out and I'm going to do some video footage of them because they're excellent games as well. And I also want to do a video for Call of Duty 2, which I haven't done. I did the original Call of Duty quite some time ago, and I've always wanted to do Call of Duty 2. And I've never got round to it, and now, because the way that my recording hardware is set up, I've got one of those HD PVR things by Haupage. I can't pronounce that either. I'm rubbish with words. Anyway, that HD PVR. I've got the older one, which didn't have HDMI input on it, and therefore I have to unplug the HDMI cables out of the 360 and the PS3 and plug in the component cables and then plug them into the back, and those cables have been stuck at the back of a cupboard, buried under God knows how much stuff for quite some time, because I'd used it to record some of my TurboGrafx 16 footage and some other footage as well, Dreamcast stuff and what have you. I'd not used it to capture anything off the 360 and PS3 for quite some time. The PS4 has its own built-in capture software, which is really nice because it means you don't have to use a HD PVR. You just double click the share button on the controller and it will record 15 minutes of footage. That's not too much of a problem because you can do as many 15-minute bits of footage as your hard drive will allow, so you can knit them together. You just have to make sure you kind of keep an eye on the time so you know when the recording's stopped, because as I seem to recall, I don't think it tells you, and you need to then pause the game and make sure you don't record over the footage that's there. It's not a major problem. It's a bit of a menace. It's a bit of a pain, but if you haven't got a HD PVR, it certainly beats the hell out of paying, you know, £100 or so for one, or $100 and so for one. I mean, it comes with the console, and you can edit, you even get the Share Factory, and you can edit and upload it all to YouTube without even using a computer. So you can't really complain about it too much. But yeah, going back to this game, I absolutely love it. It's just one of those first-person shooters. When I finished playing it the first time, I straight away just started playing it again. It's really compelling. The level design is absolutely excellent. I like the range of bad guys in it. I think the weapons are fantastic. It's just a game that really gripped me from the word go, and I do love the Wolfenstein series. And this was an excellent addition to it, as they all have been. I know some people didn't like the one that came out a few years ago on the 360 and PS3, which was just called Wolfenstein. But I actually like that as well. I thought it was an excellent game. I don't think it was a case of people actively disliking it or hating it as such. I just think people were perhaps expecting something a bit different to what they've got. It was a bit of a departure. It wasn't a straightforward first-person shooter like this was, so it was a bit different. It had some degrees of ranking up in the single player. There was kind of like an RPG element, I suppose. So you got like magic powers, and you could do various things which you couldn't do in previous Wolfenstein games. So I suppose some people were a bit resistant to that, where personally I thought it was excellent. So around about here you'll see in a moment where the frame rate just drops. It's not much of a problem. It's the only time I noticed it while playing the game, and I don't know whether it was just one of those instances where you'll just see it now. It really does chug a little bit, and I guess it's just because of whatever routine was being carried out at that time. It just didn't seem to like it. It got a lot better, as you can see. It sort of sorts itself out. It reminded me of the days of gaming on a PC, where it was like it was cashing into the memory or something like that. I mean, it's kind of tricky, I suppose, doing backward compatibility in some cases, because of the fact that the consoles tend to handle things kind of differently, especially if they're using different manufacturers on graphics chips and what have you. They all do things a slightly different way that can cause problems. But yeah, it's well worth checking out if you can get hold of a copy of it, and you've got an Xbox 360 and you want to sample one of the, in my opinion, one of the best first-person shooters to come out. This is well worth picking up, though do be aware that the multiplayer element won't work. There is a multiplayer option, and there was a multiplayer with it via Xbox Live when it did come out, but that won't work now because the original Xbox servers have been switched off. So yeah, that's pretty much all I wanted to say about Return to Castle Wolfenstein. Just get it, just check it out. It's fantastic. What I really wanted to talk about in this video is kind of a follow-up to a video that Dean Thompson did. He has a channel, Vinnie Corleone 62. It's well worth checking out. If I remember, I will put a link to the channel in the description box. The thing is, I will do this video, I will process this video, but I don't know when I'll upload it. So I will do my utmost best to remember to put a link to his channel in the description box. But in case I forget, his channel name is Vinnie Corleone 62, and it's a fantastic channel. A really good channel, because he has such a positive outlook on video games that's sort of refreshing in an age where there seems to be no end of cynicism. It's nice to actually watch a video from somebody who's enjoying playing games and enjoys the hobby, because ultimately that's what it is. It's a hobby, and you know, it should be enjoyed. You should enjoy playing games. We're kind of privileged in many respects to live in an age where these type of fantasy worlds can be created and put before us, because I'm kind of lucky. I mean, I came in at the beginning of the video game revolution. You know, I started playing games in like the late 70s, as I said in a previous video. I mean, I think it was 1979 I played the first time I encountered a Space Invaders arcade machine, and it all went from there. But you know, I remember the struggles playing games when I was a kid. you know, a lot of people these days moan about certain technical aspects of playing games that I don't really think is as much of a problem. And I guess it's because I actually came from a gaming period in history where, you know, getting games to work quite often was an achievement in of itself. A lot of video games just simply didn't want to comply. By that I mean I had a Commodore. I started out with a Commodore VIC-20. Well, actually, in truth, I started out with a Radofin Pong clone console that had like something like half a dozen, 8 maybe, sports games on it that were all just variations of Pong. And then I got a Commodore VIC-20 with its, you know, I think it had a massive 2K of RAM. And then I got a Commodore 64. And both the Commodore 64 and the VIC-20 used a proprietary cassette tape. I think it was the C2N cassette tape system to load games and to load software. That's what came as standard with the computer when you bought it. I think in the US it was different. I think in the US there was more of a market there for floppy disks, the old 5¼ inch floppy disk, the 1541. I did end up buying one of them at a later date. It improved reliability, but it didn't, of loading games, but it didn't actually, well, it'd be a lie to say it didn't improve loading times, but not to the degree that one would have expected. But yeah, I mean, the games used to take that long to load. Most games that you bought back then had a loading screen and also had music that played. It gives you an idea of how long the thing used to take to load. And, you know, nowadays games are loaded in a few seconds, and, you know, you're playing usually within, you can be playing a game within 30 seconds to a minute. You know, you used to have to sit there for 5 to 10 minutes and hope to God that the game loaded. Usually your first indication that the game wasn't going to load was if you heard the tape come to the end of the tape and a little play button would flick off, and you thought, well, it's still showing it's loaded, but there's no more tape for it to load, so I guess it's failed. Or it would get to the point and the screen would quickly flash with the game, and then it had reset back to the Commodore 64 basic screen. Those were the two things that tended to happen the most. Or the flashing bars had stopped flashing and you knew you were in trouble, because they were an indicator that data was being loaded into the system memory from the cassette. So, you know, I mean, it didn't happen all the time, but it happened frequently enough for it to be a pain in the arse. And it happened frequently enough for you to, you know, stand by whenever you were loading a game. You know, you couldn't always put your hand on your heart and say, that game will load, no problem. I mean, even games that loaded 100% of the time, the slightest bit of interference would generally cause the game to fail. So, I mean, I had games that I had in compilation packs, and I would have a situation where maybe 8 out of 10 of the games in the compilation pack would load, and 2 out of them, 10, would just refuse to load. There was no point taking it back. It was, you know, it wasn't a fault with the actual cassette or anything. It was just the nature of the beast. I did end up buying a third-party cassette player for my Commodore 64, which really helped alleviate the problem, because you could adjust the tape heads, and it had a little LED counter that you could adjust, and the stronger the LED counter, the stronger the signal was from the magnetic tape. And that did work. I think it was called Load It. I can't remember which company made it now, but that was an invaluable piece of hardware. It cost me £50 at the time, but it was probably the best peripheral I ever bought for the Commodore 64. I remember saving up for ages to get one, and going back and loading in some of these games I'd had for years that I'd never been able to play. So yeah, I mean, I guess going through all of that, you build up a tolerance for things that a lot of people might be intolerant over. You know, there are still some things that piss me off. with gaming. You know, I'm not some happy clappy, you know, isn't everything, isn't the world fantastic, and isn't, you know, I don't have like birds tweeting and landing on my shoulder and smelling, you know, walking on a bed of roses every day. You know, there are things in the games industry that really annoy me. There are decisions that many of the companies make and some decisions that devs make that really annoy me. I got upset the other week about Skyrim because I got 106 hours into the game and the bloody thing kept crashing. And it turns out it's because the further you get in the game and the more stuff is lying around in the environment, you know, stuff like arrows and swords and shields and stuff like that I didn't pick up as I went along, they stay there, and it's kind of running out of memory, which keeps causing it to crash. Which the only way around it I've found is by fast traveling to most places, but that kind of defeats the objective. I love going into those type of open world games and just exploring. I mean, Skyrim is very open-ended. Not for me at the moment because it's broke, and you know, I don't want to have to start the game again. 106 hours is a long time to put into a game. I don't want to re-roll a character. If I was ever going to revisit Skyrim, it will be if I ever get myself a decent, powerful PC and get to run it with the mods on it so I can see it in its full-on glory. So I mean, that annoyed me, and you know, I went on Twitter and I just, you know, expressed it had pissed me off, and I asked Bethesda, you know, were they going to come up with a fix that didn't involve me having to start the game again, and they just kind of pushed me off, fobbed me off a bit to the forums, and you know, and I responded and said, yeah, I've done what they've said there. I've cleared the cache on the 360. I've switched off the autosave, and I've still got the problem. Nah, they never responded. That's fair enough, you know. I mean, at the end of the day, you know, they're probably busy working on other things, and Skyrim is, what, a 2-3-year-old game, and I'm, whatever, you know. I've got 106 hours out of it. I'm upset because I can't just go and play the game how I want to play it. I don't think it's right, but chucking an absolute Barney over it and acting in the way that some people tend to overreact is not going to change anything. All you're going to come across is somebody who appears to be slightly unhinged. If you go ballistic. Yeah, there are a lot of things that do annoy me, and you know, sometimes it's good to vent your spleen, but you also have to be reasonable, and you also have to try to realise that nobody sets out to make a bad game. Nobody sets out to have a game with bugs in. If a game comes out and it's got bugs in, there are reasons for it. Usually it's because a lot of game developers are working under a very, very, very strict time restriction. They have to get a game out to meet fiscal demands of the publishers, because publishers have shareholders and shares are very important, and the longer a game is stuck in development, it's costing money, it's not making money. So a lot of publishers will want game developers to get the game out the door as soon as possible, and you know, sometimes things don't always work according to plan. And you know, do you think game developers like being carpeted? I mean, some of the abuse that they get is downright ridiculous. I mean, a few years ago, well, I say a few years ago, it might have been last year, year before, some poor guy who was developing on Call of Duty, on the multiplayer, they changed the specifications of one of the guns and he started getting death threats. I mean, I couldn't believe it. You know, really? Death threats over a video game? Is there not more important things to get really upset about in the world? Especially at the moment. You know, it's threatening some poor guy because you changed the specifications of a gun in a game. It's a bit extreme. You know, it's a bit out there. And then you've got this guy, I mean, in the past week, this guy who's suing Sony for $5 million. Is it dollars or pounds? Because the multiplayer in Killzone Shadowfall on the PS4, the resolution drops to 960p. It's not 1080p, it's 960p. Apparently that is enough for him to come up with a $5 million lawsuit. I don't know where the $5 million comes from. I was always under the impression if you weren't happy about something, you are only entitled to a refund of the financial outlay that you made for the actual product. I mean, is he going down the path? Has he suffered some sort of emotional trauma or something? Is that what this is? I don't know how this stuff works legally. I'm no legal eagle. I'm no expert, so I don't know. But it's $5 million seems rather preposterous. If I was Sony, I'd countersuit with one for $10 million for wasting their time and the litigation's time and Guerrilla Games' time as well. You know, I'm sure they would much rather be developing the next game rather than dealing with somebody who I think might have some sort of issues if such a drop in resolution is causing a huge problem. You know, when I see that and I compare it to, I mean, all I can say is thank God this guy didn't play Battlefield 4, because in the first few months of that, it didn't work. So God knows what would have happened to him if that had been the case. I mean, Killzone worked as far as I was aware, and it certainly didn't have the problems that Battlefield 4 had. But come on, you know, I mean, these things are games. Why do people get so bent out of shape over stuff like that? Whatever happened to actually enjoying games? I just get the feeling that some people don't actually like games, and that they're using games as some sort of way of making some sort of social commentary, because it doesn't make sense. Really doesn't make sense. Why? Where's the fun factor gone? Why are people not enjoying this stuff anymore? You know, and people's disillusionment, it spreads. I mean, the number of times I can be reading something and I start to feel disillusioned and angry, and I have to stop reading it because I think, oh God, you're turning me into one of you. You know, and like I say, I mean, there are genuine things you can be upset about. I mean, I think that Dungeon Keeper, the free-to-play, should I say freemium title on the iPhone that I downloaded was absolutely disgusting. I thought it was awful. I mean, you know, and I don't think it's particularly well put together, but I mean, I don't know how I could sue a company for that. I don't know. Yeah, it seems ridiculous to me. I just think that I don't know what's wrong with people. I mean, Dean really hit the nail on the head, you know, about the fact that people just need to lighten up a bit, and they need to start enjoying the games. You know, this is what it's all about. It's about having fun. It's about enjoying the game. It's not about, you know, giving yourself an ulcer over it. If the games are winding you up that much, it might not be a bad idea for you to not play them. Because that doesn't sound healthy, the way that some people carry on. If that's how they genuinely feel, I do suspect sometimes it's not how they genuinely feel, that there's a degree of attention seeking going on, and a degree of, you know, trying to be fake outrage. There's a lot of fake outrage that I see on the internet, and I suspect quite often it's the same thing. That there's a high degree of fake outrage with things, and people don't genuinely feel that way. They just want to put forward that opinion or appear to feel that way because, you know, it's a good way of jumping on a bandwagon or getting attention. You know, say, hey, look at me, I'm outraged. And I think that's sad. I think that's sad because there isn't really that much to be outraged about, to the degree that some people certainly do get outraged over. I mean, there are things that I'm not going to defend games companies that do ridiculous things. I'm not going to defend console manufacturers that do ridiculous things and have ridiculous policies. I'm not about to do that. But I do feel that sometimes some of this fake outrage gets tiresome and it's damaging. And you know, like Dean said in his video, and he said it in previous videos of his as well, you know, at the end of the day, companies can go out of business. You know, if the right people start telling you, you know, start setting up a campaign to make sure that people don't buy a game, or to encourage people not to buy a game, if the right people do that, in the same way that if the right people encourage you to buy something, you know, it can have a damaging effect on the sales of a game. And it doesn't take much these days for software development teams to get disbanded. I mean, even ones that have enjoyed relatively successful releases still get thrown to the wolves, and we've lost too many of them. And when you lose all of these teams, the diversity in games starts to disappear. If you've got fewer people working on games, the diversity disappears, and that's not a good thing. So, you know, it might be worth just thinking about it once in a while, you know. Is that something that's really upset me? Or, you know, am I just buying into an idea? Or has that genuinely really upset me? So yeah, I mean, that's pretty much all I've got to say in this video. It's a long one. This is going to take ages to upload, but never mind. Yeah. Try and check out Return to Castle Wolfenstein if you can. It's well worth it. And you know, if you're one of those people that games just piss you off, take a break from them, have a little sabbatical, you know, and then try getting back into them again. Anyway, thank you for watching.